It's really changed the relationship that I have, not just with me and alcohol, but with me and really tuning into what my body needs in a different way. Hey there, welcome to the Female Health Solution podcast, where we discuss women's health, hormones, and everything else in between. Join me as we dive into the tools that you need to live your healthiest life. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Female Health Solution podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Beth Westy. And as you know, when I podcast, as I've done, I don't know how many hundreds of podcasts, I will do episodes where I talk about specific health information or talk about supplements or talk about fat cells or talk about, hormones, obviously. And then I do other episodes where I just kind of share more about my life and update on things. And this was a question I got asked recently a couple of times in the last week on calls. Because when I work with people, right, we work together, they're in a group, they're in a program, we do check-in calls and we talk about stuff. And people ask me, because this is how women get helpful information. You want to hear other people's stories. You want to hear what they went through. You want to hear what they did or did not do and how it impacted them, because then you can really decipher that information and figure out how it applies to you. So this is one of those podcasts I'm going to share talking about how I have stopped drinking recently. Now, to phrase, I never really drank a lot, aside from college, which was 20 years ago. So, right. But there's, I want to say, a touchy subject. So I'm going to broach this and talk about this from a lot of different angles, from the health angle, from the genetic angle, hereditary angle, and just from personal perspective. And this is not to say that any one way to do things is right or wrong. That's not what it is. This is just to share. I know that there are a lot of women and a lot of people who go through phases where they experiment or try out not drinking. The most common thing is that when I start working with someone or we take somebody through a hormone detox, I do recommend, cutting out alcohol for a certain period of time, 30 days, let's say, while we're working on processing things through the liver. And some of the feedback that I get from people is they realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much of my day or week was centered around drinking. And I don't like that it had that hold on me. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to hang out with my friends, or oh, this and this, or oh, I told my husband I was going to quit drinking or just not drink for a month. Again, I don't want to say quit drinking because that makes it seem like you're quitting forever and, that type of a thing, versus say, hey, I'm going to take a pause, pause on it, take a break from it, whatever, for a certain period of time. Fine. Right. And, oh, I told my husband and he said, oh, fine. Because normally we come home from work, we have dinner, we share a glass of wine, blah, blah, blah. And I told him I was going to not do that for 30 days. He said, not a big deal. But lo and behold, after the first week, he said it started to bother him because he was still having a glass of wine. He didn't change his habits. I just had a seltzer or some other kind of mocktail instead, and I was fine with it. But he said it started to bother him because then he realized he was having wine alone and he felt weird about that. Like, am I alcoholic now? Now I'm questioning myself. And then so he had an issue and said, I don't like this now that you're not drinking with me. And then he had feelings on this. So she said it opened up a whole discussion for them as a couple on what that means and the importance of it, because she goes, I would have said before that it is not about the alcohol. We have a drink together because we unwind, we relax, we hang out in the kitchen, blah, blah, blah. And she said, I would have put any amount of money on the fact that you could have switched out our glasses of wine for something else and it wouldn't have mattered. And she goes, now I see that that's not the case. And it's really interesting what we're going through with this. I had another gal that she was going through her detox phase and she was had planned a family trip. Her and her brothers and her parents, they have a cabin up north and In Minnesota, people have cabins all the time, right? Like half of the most people live in the cities, right? But then they own a cabin or know somebody or somebody in the family owns a cabin up on a lake because there's so many here. And so, oh, we go to the cabin. We go to the cabin on the weekends, right? And so her parents have this cabin house that they've had for decades. And, the family was going up for this weekend. And she was like, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be wonderful. Oh, but shoot, we're not drinking. Shoot, I'm not drinking. And then she said she realized how much her family revolves around drinking. She was like, I actually had the most fun up at the cabin that I've had in such a long time. I got up really early. I wasn't hungover. I went for this hike that I haven't been on in a long time in years because every time I'd go up recently, I would blow off steam, using air quotes with my fingers right now, blow off steam by getting drunk with all the adults at night and then be too hungover to go on this amazing hike. But she's like, yeah, I wasn't hungover. So I got up early, went on the hike, had a great time, was literally the most enjoyable trip that I've had up there in years. But that's because I wasn't focused on the drinking piece of it. I wasn't focused on what and when and how much or this or what I'm going to drink and all these things. And she goes, I didn't realize that my activities were centered around that. My vacation was centered around drinking. And I don't like that. I don't want it to be like that. I don't want to have that. I want to go on a vacation to go on a vacation. And she said she realized that she'd done that with vacations in the past, going camping, going into Vegas or doing all these things, that it was all about, oh, we're going to go and go out. And that's fun and that's fine to do that. But she's like, yeah, it was like we have to go and anywhere we go or anything we do, it has to involve drinking. And she was like, so it's been really eye opening for me. She's like, I'm going to experiment with this more. I'm going to definitely be doing, certain time frames where I'm not drinking and still doing life things. Yeah. So people's decision to not drink, and I feel like more and more people are doing that now just because people are talking about it now. But more and more people making the decision to not drink alcohol is not based on the fact that they're an alcoholic or not, or they, it's more of I'm doing this either for a health reason or I'm just, not partaking for that reason. So it's really interesting just to see that shift and change and how different it is for people. When I talk about not drinking for a period of time, some of it does come from, um, I've always known that, right? And I say genetically, right? It runs in the family, right? There are, horrific stories on both my mother's side and my father's side, you know, great great grandparents, things, blah, blah, blah. My father's parents, uh, being alcoholics, things like that, right? I know it runs in the family. I've seen, I've grown up observing really tough things. So knowing that, and I didn't really drink that much in high school. I mean, maybe a few times. College was college, right? But beyond that, I was in grad school and then honestly, I graduated and then a year later I got pregnant. So I didn't really drink, but I never minded when my husband drank, but he also has not drank in 8 years. As I'm recording this, it's 8 years he has not drank. I would not have said he had a problem with it either because he'd gone through phases or times where he just wouldn't drink, but he'd come home from work and have a couple of beers, have 2, 3 beers on the regular, but wasn't a big deal, right? But he has not had it at all. And what I've noticed since I have been on a different space, there's there's a different way that I view it now for myself and why I have not drank, and I don't even know how long. I mean, I was never a big drinker before. I'd maybe have a glass of wine or something here or there, or if I was just stressed or something, right? I would have a glass of wine. Or if I was going to clean a lot, I'd have a glass of wine. Or if I was going to stay up late wrapping Christmas presents or something, have a glass of wine, right? Not a big deal. But there was something that changed where I was like, I want to have a beverage or a celebratory drink with something if I'm celebrating something big or, something like that. Otherwise, I'm like, is it really worth it for me to have a drink? Or do I really want this? Or is it something I'm just putting in place because I was stressed out or I want to relax or I want to loosen up a little bit or something like that? And I decided to not do that. That if I'm going to have a drink, I'm not quitting drinking. I'm only going to have a drink if it's going to be in a celebratory fashion, and I just haven't had an event where that is the case. Because before it'd be, like once every week or 2 or 5 weeks, right? I never counted, I never paid attention. But it would be the purpose behind what I was doing, the purpose behind the action. So that is the one thing that I decided to change. And there definitely have been days or evenings or on a weekend or something where I'm like, holy bananas. Whoo, this has been a crazy day. Oh my gosh, a glass of wine would be amazing right now. Oh, and then I think, you know what? See, this is what I don't want to use it for. That's the typical, that's the whatever. Okay, I am feeling wound up a little bit. I want to unwind. What are other things I can do? I can take an Epsom salt bath. I can have more adaptogens, right? Get me some ashwagandha. I can do different stretching. I can do different things. And I started utilizing all these other tools that I have at my fingertips to help unwind and doing different deep breathing. And it's really changed the relationship that I have, not just with me and alcohol, but with me and really tuning into what my body needs in a different way. Tuning into and listening to, you know what, I need to unwind. I'm feeling really, oh my gosh, I really need to unwind. And addressing that in a completely different way. Because it honestly felt like a cheat to say, well, I'm just going to have a glass of wine. I am a lightweight of a person, by the way, just putting that out there. I'm a tall gal. I'm very tall, but I'm such a lightweight. It's embarrassing. Good old methylation issues. But it felt like a cheat to utilize that because, I mean, 20 minutes in, after a glass of wine, I could be like, woo, it just felt different. And I didn't like that then. I didn't like how that felt. So I just decided to stop doing that. So it's not that I'm quitting drinking or quitting. I'm just using it for a different thing, or I want it to be included in my regiment in for a different purpose. And so now, as I'm recording this, I'm trying to remember the last time I had a beverage. 3 months. And again, not that this isn't the longest time I've ever gone without drinking, right? I have 3 kids, I went through all their pregnancies not drinking anything because my husband was very paranoid about it. I, so, I mean, but again, the purpose and intention behind it is different. And I'll be very honest, there are moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I having a glass of wine. Yep. I'm like, that's not what I want to use it for. It's a really different way though, to then sit there and think, "Oh, okay. I got to deal with this. I got to deal with the feelings and the things and whatever I'm feeling like that's stressing me out right now. I got to deal with that. Like really like head on face it versus having a glass of wine, blowing through it and then just getting on with my day the next day." Yeah. So, that's what I wanted to share. Just different thoughts, different things. And again, share some stories of some other women that I've worked with that have realized different things about it too. Again, it's not bad. I don't believe that having a glass of wine or something or having a drink here or there is a bad thing. I don't, right? It's just most of the time, like if I take stock of the times in my life that I was drinking, why was I doing that? I don't like the real reason, if I'm honest with myself. And I really want to change that moving forward. So, better late than never, I suppose. So that's what I wanted to share. That's what I wanted to talk about today. And just put that out there. Put that out there for you guys that have struggled with this or thought about this or, again, worried about, these different things. I remember talking to I feel like I've said this before on a podcast talking about alcohol. My husband, has there's a lot of alcoholism in his family too. It's not that different than mine, right? And I remember in college when we were engaged and serious, about a relationship and I knew we were going to be together, that we talked about stuff where I was like, just so you know, I'm going to be keeping tabs on this. I know we're in college and I know whatever, but just so you know, the lifestyle we're living right now in college, you know, going out and partying on the weekends and stuff, that is not going to be our life together. That's not what I have in mind, at least. So, and he agreed, right? He was like, yeah, I don't want that either. I don't want to be doing this 10 years from now, et cetera. And I was like, no, I mean, I didn't realize 10 years from then we'd have 3 kids. But it's regardless of having kids or not, like we just talked about the life that we wanted together and that didn't look like what we were living in college, right? It's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to do on your own. And it's a tough thing to really be honest with yourself. And it's also a different thing than to be in relationships with other people, your significant other, your family members, your friends, right? If you hang out with friends or do something like that, it's very different. I worked with a gal who a big part of her business was networking and going to happy hours. That's where all of her clients were. So literally 5 to 6 days a week, she'd work, she had different, like she didn't start work at 9 a.m. She had meetings starting at noon or 1. She worked kind of in the afternoon and evening. But a big piece of her business and keeping her business going, and she was very successful, she was very good at it, was going to happy hours. Networking, connecting, all that stuff. And when she decided to take a break from drinking, she ordered mocktails. And she said that she realized one of the reasons that she was not a morning person was because she was just so used to going to happy hours all the time. And that when the 30 days was up and she said she had a drink again, she decided, she goes, yeah, if I do these happy hours, I'm only going to have 1 drink instead of 2 or 3. And she liked how she felt overall better when she wasn't having drinks every single day. The only way you're going to know that is if you try it. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on it. That's just my thoughts. That is what I'm doing right now, why I'm doing it, right? So, for what it's worth. Let me know your thoughts. Would love your feedback. Or if you've tried to take a break from drinking and found difficulty with it, let me know too. It can be a tough thing. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing my episodes with your, fellow people that you want to share them with. And I always appreciate, the positive feedback. So bye. Thank you for joining me on today's episode. If you would like more information, just head on over to drbethwesty.com for all the show notes and information from today's episode. And if you're looking for more community, more support, you can find and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and I would love to see you there.